Ask any successful person and they will tell you how important their network is to them. Your network can be your single greatest asset in life, yet so many people don't work on building their networks. Today, we're going to talk with a master networker. So if you are interested in upping your game, stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to another Future Tech video podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with someone I have known for a long time. And I know her because she is a master at networking and pretty much everyone in Chicago knows her. EBarry runs her own consulting company these days, the EBarry Group. But in her past, she ran IT for the Chicago Water Reclamation District. She was CIO for McCormick Place and Navy Pier and first Deputy CIO of the city of Chicago. And if there is an organization in the city of Chicago, she probably sits on its board. If you don't know Ellen, you should, and here's your opportunity because she's here to talk to us about the importance of networking, and she's going to give us insight into what works for her. Welcome, Ellen.
Hey, Chris, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. It's awesome. So, Ellen, before we get started, tell me a little bit about where you came from and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I'm a Chicago kid, born and raised in Chicago on the north side. Come from a family of 6 brothers and 2 sisters that range from attorneys, a lot of police officers. Did my undergrad at UIC in mathematics. When I finished that, as I taught school for a couple of years, I taught 7th and 8th grade math and had a fantastic time and learned probably most of the lessons of my life. During my first experience in the business world, I went on for an MBA at Loyola in quantitative methods and computers, and left a governmental agency to take on a project management role with a company called Newark Electronics on the north side of Chicago. And that was my first forte. But my goal at that time was actually to become a facilitator between the tech people and the business people, to try to explain to the business what they could reasonably expect from tech, and explain to the technicians why they had their job. What are they doing to make the business different? And I found that role to be pretty exciting. From there, I did a couple of other things. I actually went into sales for a small startup firm. Ultimately, she didn't know how to manage her money, and that went under. I went into natural gas supply and management as a support for the information there. I did a gig at Mount Sinai Hospital where I implemented a major system for their associated clinics. And then I was offered a job with the city of Chicago when the city hired the first woman CIO, and she brought in a team of professionals, and I was lucky enough to be one of them, to be part of her deputy CIO team. Shortly after that, actually, I was on loan to the police department and worked on trying to link the IT organization with the police department with the IT organization at the city of Chicago. And it was really some interesting and wonderful work. The role of the deputy CIO, the first deputy CIO, opened up at the city when that individual went over and became CIO for MacArthur Foundation. So I began running computer operations, having absolutely no technical background, but I have the ability to build teams and to work with teams and empower teams. With that, I got some tremendous experiences in outsourcing both desktop services and mainframe operations at the time. Y2K, right at that time, I was there, spent all night at the city as we converted over from the 90s to the 2000s. And that's a brilliant story in all of its detail.
Those were simpler times, huh?
Yeah, simpler times. But at that time, there was an opportunity over at McCormick Place in Navy Pier, and I interviewed for a job. And shortly in the year 2000, I accepted a position as their first CIO of McCormick Place in Navy Pier, a governmental entity that's involved with conventions and meetings and obviously tourism. Navy Pier is the 8th largest tourist attraction in the country. So very, very high caliber, good operations. So from that, I spent 10 years there. I've done some independent consulting. I actually ran IT as the CIO equivalent at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District a few years back, with the challenge to try to improve the services and streamline the operations for Water Rec. And then here we are now.
So, I mean, I think it's really interesting. You have a really diverse background, and I got to imagine that really helps, because you can probably talk to anybody about what they do and have a little bit of knowledge about it at this point. And I know you're also on a million boards, right? Every time I look up an organization in Chicago, it's like your name seems to be associated with it. So, obviously, just having that background and being able to get, all these positions, and, I imagine networking was a big part of that, right, for you?
Yes, actually, as I started with McCormick Place in the year 2000, early years there, first CIO and then first female CIO, I was really a loner. I was starting down a path and not quite understanding, where I could get information if I needed it. And I became introduced to a couple of other women that were CIOs that I was not aware of. And we started a group called Senior Women in Technology for women that were CIOs, truly in the early 2000s, to talk about those issues that were unique to us and how are we going to solve it. And so we'd sit around in a circle and drink wine and bring up issues and try to figure out how we should work through them. Became really good buddies during that period of time, with a lot of respect for the work that other women were doing. And part of that started down the path of networking. So from that, I was introduced to SIM's Chicago chapter, which is Society for Information Management. And this is a group of senior IT professionals, kind of represent the CIO community in Chicago. I liked the work they were doing, so I joined that group. I became introduced through that to the Chicago Innovation Awards, which are the annual awards that we go through to look at new ideas that are germinating and becoming businesses in the Chicago area. And that work I thought was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, that I can look at entrepreneurs, I can look at ideas, and I'll tell you the first idea that really wowed me. It sounds silly, but at the time, Wrigley Gum was a sponsor of the Chicago Innovation Award. And I was like, well, what does Wrigley do in innovation? How would that be?
Right.
And when I went to the award ceremony and they had their little goodie bag, one of the things they had done was they put some gum in the goodie bag. And one of the flavors of gum that Wrigley had at that time was key lime pie.
Yeah.
I'm like, key lime pie? I tasted this gum and it was amazing. It tasted just like key lime pie. And at that time I thought, God, this is brilliant. If Wrigley can be this innovative, everybody else can be innovative too. So I became entranced with Chicago Innovation Awards, and I would go to the annual events and learn about new things and introduce myself to the guys who were running that at that time. It was Dan Miller and Tom Kuzmarski were co-founders. And, I enjoyed them so much that for their annual award judging, they invited me to become a judge as part of that. And I have been a judge since it's probably 07, 06. And I'll tell you, it's probably some of the best work we do annually is going through the new ideas that come out of there. Also, as part of SIM, learning the who's who in the IT field. I was introduced to IC Stars. IC Stars is an organization that takes young adults from the inner city who have run through serious adversity in their lives and trains them to become technical professionals and leaders, and helps push them out into a community that is looking for diversity, as well as expecting that they will meanwhile give back to their communities and lead in unique ways to help other people become with improved lives. So Yes, I sit on the board of SIM. Yes, I sit on the board of IC Stars, and I sit on the board of Chicago Innovation.
And we've had Sandy Castrol on the podcast before, and she's just an absolute force of nature, wonderful person too. And I'll put a link up here for that podcast as well. We're thinking about like networking. I mean, I think some people dismiss the concept of doing all this networking because they're like, what do I need to know all these people for, right? I just do my job and I kind of go home. But there's a lot more to it. I mean, can you speak to some of the value that people can get out of it?
Well, actually, where some of this actually started, as I think back, is that as a new CIO at McCormick Place, I joined a SID group, a special interest group of CIOs, just in a roundtable discussion about whatever topic it was at the time. And you learn so much from those conversations. And, I tend to ingest my thoughts in things. And in the process, it was kind of amazing to me because people would say, oh, God, that's a great idea. That's a great thought. And I'd kind of look around and say, it's just a thought. It's just my thought. But suddenly to realize that my thoughts had value, not only learning from someone else, but learning that where your mind is set and the road and the path that you think is important, other people agree with, becomes really, really valuable. It validates who you are. It improves your self-confidence. It encourages you to participate more because there is this positive feedback in a conversation like that. So networking is more than meeting people. In fact, that is almost secondary to me. To me, it's the ideas. Yeah. To me, it's the ability to take something I think is important and expand upon it because someone else has added value to it.
Yeah, I think you're kind of talking to two different points there. One is sort of that idea of validation of your ideas, which is so important because, and especially leadership too. I mean, this is not just people who are in the gears of the organization. This is like people at the top oftentimes don't ever have any conversations with people below them, or and they don't have like good sources of information, and having that sort of validation around them is really helpful. But it's also that idea of like people you can turn to, and it's like, I've got this problem, I don't know how to solve it, right? It's going to people for help. I mean, Sundish, you were just talking about that recently, how important your network is just to like figure out where to go for help, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think humility is something that I have learned, and after losing, and I found myself losing by myself, and now I try to make sure I don't lose by myself. I try to bring other people in and say, hey, what am I missing? What am I think I got this right, or if I have a very stressful meeting coming up, just to be able to talk to someone that can actually give me some pointers and maybe just calm me down a little bit and get me focused. Or getting in an argument with someone, which happens too, unfortunately. But then it's like to go to someone else and say, hey, what do you think? Was I in the wrong on that one? So I think there's just so many ways that you can use it. We're all trying to make good decisions, right? We're all trying to do the right thing. I think just having a network where you can actually get good guidance, good counseling.
And I got to admit, Ellen, I've used you for that in the past too. Both Sundish and I have.
Don't we use each other? And truly, one of the concepts that comes out of innovation is, failure is okay. And in our past lives, we expected to be perfect. Or we wanted people to think we're perfect. Mm-hmm. We know we're not perfect, but we want others to think we're perfect. Yeah. And so it's a humbling experience when you run across problems. But you're right, it's not about running across the problems. It's about how are you going to handle those problems. And having your network or your people, your trustworthy individuals that you can reach out to, or hopefully you were working with in the first place, that can say, okay, we must have done that one right or wrong, or, some things we did right. How can we improve on it? And then the next time, maybe think in advance versus afterward on how to improve that, that sales or that interaction, somehow to be more successful at it the next time. through
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Well, and I know, this also sort of touches into the area of something that I know is really important to you, and then the idea of mentorship, right? And finding those mentors.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on for people who, are kind of in a place where they don't have a big network and they're trying to, expand their network and maybe find these people who can offer them advice and help or mentorship. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the mentorship is always, it's always critically valuable, and figuring out a way to do it can be a challenge. So if you're an individual and you're isolated in your office, finding a mentor is not going to be easy. It is important to get out someplace, to find an organization that represents the field that you're in and join that organization. My opinion is that once you start to have the conversation, and in many cases, my major recommendation would be is find out who's running that organization and introduce yourself to that person. Try to understand, what they're up to and how you can become more involved in it by attending further meetings or understanding the objectives of it, to make those connections first. And then with that, see if there is someone that you trust well enough that you would ask if you could, throw ideas off of them and potentially allow them to mentor you. Now, there are structured mentoring programs, and there is a structured one through Chicago Innovation called the Women's Mentoring Co-op that works in conjunction with another organization I've been very active with called ARA, Attract, Retain, and Advance Women in Technology.
There's another organization.
And a fantastic organization run by three women I consider personal friends, fabulous women, Leslie Vickery, Megan McCann, and Jane Hamner. And their goal had been with ARA to set up mentoring, but they realized it was better to partner with Chicago Innovation. And we've begun an official mentoring program allowing senior women to work with women coming up through the IT ranks and see if we can help them. And that's been highly successful.
Well, and another big, part of all of this too is, most people get their jobs through somebody they know. Most organizations hire recommended individuals, right? And so clearly that means that, networking is an integral part of finding a job and advancing your career, right?
Correct. Absolutely correct. In fact, the reason I got the job, or I at least got the offer of the job at McCormick Place, was through some people I knew. And they knew that the job was open, and they made a call and suggested I interview over there. And that was exactly, that first stage of understanding what role that plays. We all know that talent and finding high quality talent is one of the biggest obstacles in any organization's list of challenges. Mm-hmm. And we tend to trust that if we know someone that makes a recommendation, that recommendation is going to be a pretty good one. And usually on the other side of the coin, if that recommendation comes to work, they knew they don't want to, they don't want to insult someone that's referred them. They're probably going to be a good hire. It's not an absolute, but it's a pretty good chance. And so in the field of endless masses of people out there, trying to find the right fit for you can be a really critical decision that can be quite valuable through the connections, through the networking links that we have.
And I think that's this. I hear this all the time from people. It's like, oh, I sent out 100 resumes and I had no responses, and I just do that. And we actually had an individual on who works for LinkedIn, and he was talking about how he ended up at LinkedIn, and the story basically was he sent out resume after resume after resume, and he was getting absolutely nowhere, no offers, nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And so he sort of changed his tactic, and he got on LinkedIn before he worked for LinkedIn and started making those connections and just reaching out to people and saying, hey, I think your job sounds really interesting. I'd like to learn more about it, and and approaching it from a networking perspective rather than from just this I'm just going to throw this all over the fence and hope something sticks, right?
So we know it's recruiters, if recruiters are hired, and who can refer you to a recruiter. That's another thing is in my network are recruiters. All right. Which is really fabulous. And recruiters want to be in a network because they want to know where the talent's at.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a symbiotic relationship. And again, they have their own business challenges, not unlike anyone else. But meanwhile, they're looking to place talent and they're looking to source it, which is also a big challenge. So very often in these organizations, you will also find people that are, if they're not recruiters, are very close to recruiters.
Yeah, and I think that also touches on another interesting point too, is the idea of reciprocity. It's like the recruiters are there to get something out of it, and you want them in there to get something out of it. So it's that sort of sustainable ecosystem of mutual self-interest, I guess, right? That makes it all go. Yeah,
there's where everybody wins, right? Those are the best partnerships. Those are the best relationships where, 3-4 people get together and everyone's walking away and saying, this is a good deal. This is a good agreement, right? Yeah. The notion of like having 3 people coming to the table, and 2 people win and 1 person loses, that's not, just not a good partnership,
doesn't necessarily
right?
lose,
It's
they
like,
just don't win.
Yeah.
And if that one person is the giver all the time, getting nothing back. But in most of these cases, now we do see situations where people will join an organization like SIM because they know they're going to be looking for another job and they make connections. And then they exit out when they get to the other job. The position that I take on this is beyond the networking. The value of knowing people outside of the literal business you're in, I think is so valuable. Again, as you said it earlier, my career has been all over the board in all kinds of different organizations and business fields. I find that exhilarating. I find it exciting to learn about different organizations. And, from a background in IT, I really am the business person. I want to see the profits and loss. I want to see the business model. I want to see the solutions. I want to see why the customer likes this organization. I've often told my IT staff that you should be walking in the shoes of your customer so that when the solution is delivered to them, you have enough experience to know immediately when they get used to it what they're going to ask for next, because you know enough about the product or the service or whatever we're delivering. And so I have encouraged my staff to learn business all the way along, because not only does this what pays our check, but this is really exciting part. I had an experience back at Newark Electronics back in the 90s where when IBM was moving away from selling equipment only to selling services. And we had a couple of guys that had come in to try to pitch services and ideas, and I was the person they were talking to. So they made a suggestion. Newark Electronics was a major distributor of electronic components, and they, selling for organizations like Motorola, for example. And so these guys came in with an idea before the internet was the internet about linking to IBM's information network by putting a data link from our System 38 AS400 off to IBM's environment, and the same from the sourcer, so that we could do a pass-through and actually see the inventory that they have and let our procurement people actually grab that inventory. And so the systems programmers did all this work. And I finally said to them, I want to show you what you just did. So sit down here and actually show them how all of the work that they did made all the difference to the procurement people. And, as I said, my job in life, I think, has been a facilitator to share with the business what tech can do and for sure share with tech, what their job should be all about.
So, we talk about this sort of, just everybody having, getting something out of it. How do you, like when you step into a situation, you're kind of networking with somebody and you want to like engage them and, have them in part of your orbit, like how do you figure out, like what is it that I can offer? And I think, a lot of people have that when they talk to people, that imposter syndrome. They always feel like I don't have anything to offer anybody, right? You know, how do you find that thing that is that mutual reciprocity sort of benefit? You know, like how do you get that out of people?
Well, certainly, you know, I think for all of us, it shouldn't be about us. It should be about the other person. And when we make it about the other person, there is a respect for the role we're playing here, obviously. Yeah. And in most cases, people will play that back. So I find it far more interesting to figure out what somebody else wants and needs than necessarily what I want and need. So I'm not going into it with a absolute objective. I'm going in it to learn. I'm going in it to participate. I'm going in it to meet new people, and maybe because I like people, to try to understand not only what drives them but what challenges them. And so, you know, if we do a little more give back, maybe, at least in my case, I've learned to get a lot because I give a lot, and much of that is my own satisfaction.
Yeah, that is such great advice. And you know, I've heard you say this before too, a version of that too, Sundish, you know, but like, I think that's because when you give something, people feel more inclined to, you know, if they get something for free, they want to give you something back. You know, that's just basic human nature. And I think that's great. Start with the perspective of like, I'm going to help as many people as I can here and see what comes back to me.
Or even just help one person or help two people. I mean, find somebody that you like. You know, so often, certainly not during COVID, but, you know, the cocktail party ahead of some event has been historically our networking environment. Yeah. And that has always had a chance to just ask people who they are, what they are, you know, what do they do and why, and learn. And of course, I've always been an observer. So I want to know who's kind of running the organization. I want to know who the significant people are as you watch crowds come in and introduce themselves. There's always a core group of people that seem to be, you know, the main source for this crowd, and get to know them a little bit to see why they are as important or as influential or as desirable as people want to be. And because generally speaking, that's where the ideas are going to be. Generally speaking, that's where you're going to learn a lot, are these people that have been the influencers, as we talk about now and in this modern day, that I never looked at as influencers, but clearly are. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really interesting, because when you look at sort of, you know, the concept of, you know, human networks, there are super connectors, right? They're hubs, and it's interesting that you refer to them, and rightly so, as influencers. And that's not what we always, you know, that we use a lot of different terms for those people in the old days in the physical world, but they were just, you know, before online presences, the influencers of that era, right? So, I mean, I like your advice about going into a place and taking a look around and see who is everybody talking to and trying to get into that. But, you know, for some people, that's really hard. And this is another conversation I have with Sundish, because I'm the introvert and he's the extrovert. But when we go out to a room of people like that, I'm the one who's always just walking up to people and talking to them, because my daughter, it drives her absolutely nuts, because I'll talk to anybody, you know, and she's like, oh my God, you're so embarrassing. And I think, you know, Sundish, you know, he's uncomfortable with that sort of scenario as well, you know. And I guess I wonder, like, how do you get comfortable with, you know, just, you know, feeling validated to go and talk to somebody?
You know, it's interesting, because as a kid I was really shy and quiet, really no, and that's no joke. I mean, people laugh at me about that, but I do think that my job as a teacher, 7th and 8th grade, which I really liked early on in my career, made all the difference, because it taught me that it can't be about me. You can't teach school and have it about you. You have to have it about the kids. I mean, we learn it as parents for sure, but prior to that, education was it was a humbling experience. okay, and understanding how challenged kids are and how insecure people are. And one of the things that I had realized early in my life then was everybody's really insecure. Yeah. Everybody is. They just put on a better face. And I figured it out. I thought, well, when I realized that the people that I thought were the most secure people, when you talked to them, you found out that they had a lot of insecurities. I thought, well, if they can put on a face of confidence, I can put on a face of confidence. And that, and so I spoofed them. You go out and you smile and you talk to people. And one of the things that which has worked out very successfully is I didn't want to talk about me. Yeah. I want to talk about somebody else because it took the pressure off of me.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, you learn a lot. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more interesting than talking about yourself all the time. And that's probably the best lesson that I've learned is that when you let go of you and allow yourself to get into other people, you get it back in spades. You learn so much. You come out of it feeling like you really had a good experience. And you can qualify it. Was it a good experience or not a good experience? And obviously focus on the ones that are successful and renew those. Go back to those people. Meet them at the next event. Find out where else they go. Find out what organizations they hang with. And that's one way, because that's exactly what happened with me, is I started with SWIT and ended up with, SIM, Chicago Innovation, IC Stars, ARA, and onward. So, I guess the concept that ideas beget ideas and friendships beget friendships.
Yeah.
And so, if we're going to work for all of these years in our lives, we should be enjoying it and hopefully enjoying the job itself, mm-hmm. but also enjoying, the peripheral things that help improve who you are in that position.
Well, one of the things I think, because very early on, it was very hard for me to do that too, mm-hmm. And I think, part of it was at some point I realized I'm like, I got to stop taking myself so seriously, because nobody cares that much about me. They're not analyzing me. They're not looking at me. They're having a quick conversation and turn around, and they've probably already forgotten me, maybe, in that 5 seconds. And, like I used to go in and I it'd ruminate in my head, and I just that was, again, it was all kind of focused towards me, about me and what I'm doing, in my head. But, I'm just a clown,
just a guy
walking around here, just,
I'm just a guy. I'm just a person. And the fact that, you have a choice, even if you ever want to see these people again. So, hoping that you don't make a total fool of yourself through some silly thing. But I mean, if you're just a guy or just a gal, you're going to walk into a place, and you're right. They'll never remember you unless there's a recurrence.
Yeah.
And that recurrence is the only reason why I'm recognizable, is because, I kept going back.
Yeah, and I used to do this thing too back in my younger days when I would hang out in bars and things like that, and I just see random people or whatever, and it's like I said, everybody has one great story that they love mm-hmm. to tell, and I just asked them. I say what's your one great story that if it was going to sum you up, what's that one great story you would tell people? And I heard the craziest thing, and the insane things that people would tell me. I mean, it was just wonderful. I mean, it was just, and I felt like we were instant friends after that, and I think, maybe little tricks like that can, help people, find where your area of comfort is.
Yeah. Or, but we in a professional environment, it's like, where do you work? What's your job? All you have to do is say, what do you like about your job? That's a key piece, is that, what makes you happy? What do you like?
What are you passionate about?
Right. Or what do you like about this organization? Why are you here? What do you get from this? I mean, those kinds of questions don't hurt any of us. And you don't have to have a lot of self-confidence to ask them. But the thing I also believe in, you and I had this conversation before, Chris, it's an investment in myself. It should be an investment in us as professionals to get out there and be involved with these in order to be the best professional we can be. So I like it because there's the added value of having a good time,
Yeah.
learning a bunch, having a good time,
Yeah.
making some long-term friends as an opportunity. But I think also it's an investment in who you are as a professional, because each and every one of us are going to change jobs in our lives. It's no longer working for IBM for 50 years, right?
Yeah.
Now you are going to need to have connections sometime when you're off looking for another job. And as we've said already, it's almost who you know that will make the difference in whether or not you can find a position that you're going to be happy with.
Yeah. Who you know or who knows you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, true, right?
Well, yeah, yeah, and that's what I was going to say is we're in this world now, this digital world of creating your brand. Everyone is talking about what's your brand? What's your brand? Who are you? You know, I think I'm with Chris where, you know, I don't want people to know very much about me, to be honest. You know, I really just wanted to have more of a private life. But what I have learned from all of this is taking one relationship at a time. You know, whoever's in front of me, that's the person I'm most interested in at that time. I make the most of it. Going to lunches with a client or whatever, maybe we talk 10% about work, but 90% about the person and their lives and what's important to them and things of that nature. And I feel like what that allows us to do is create our brand in these relationships. So now your network, if you have a good network and you have a good brand, like Ellen, you've dominated in this, it's like it makes me want to make good decisions. It makes me want to help people. I want to pay it forward because that's the brand that I want. I want people to see me as someone that, you know, if I can help them, I would do whatever I can to help them.
And so beyond the brand, it's having people think positively about you. You know, that if the name Chris Brandt comes up, they go, "Oh yeah, that's a great guy. I really like Chris." Okay, and
I'm not sure that's what they say, but yeah.
Well, I'm quite sure that there's a lot of that. But and again, I think it's the same issue that you talk about is that when you talk to someone else and let them tell you the story, let them tell you what's happening and important in their lives. Tell them if they start to tell you, you know, where their pain points are. You know, you can figure out if there's a way you can help them.
So, you know, I think what Sundish, you know, is mentioning, and we talked about sort of the concept of the influencer, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, Sundish talking about your personal brand now. You know, I think in some ways, we were just talking earlier before we started here about sort of the changing role of sales. And we're going to have another podcast that sort of talks to that point. But I mean, you know, there's an idea that in the future, you know, all that back end stuff is going to be handled by the big, you know, AWS, Amazons of the world and things like that. But that the very nature of sales is going to be, you know, like the influencer, right? And we're seeing that in the retail space. And so that network and building that personal brand is really important. And in some ways, it can be a little bit one way too, right? I mean, because what we're doing here, right? I mean, there's people who are going to watch it that we'll never meet. Mm-hmm. But it's extending our network and our brand in some regard, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's interesting because it's like it can be, it's expanded in a different way these days. And I don't know if that's better or worse. It's hard to say.
Well, you know, I'm not a believer that the old model is totally changed. I'm not a believer in that. I believe the face-to-face stuff will lead us forward, not right at this moment, but there's so much pent-up demand for face-to-face opportunities. Yeah. There's so much pent-up demand to try to get back together in networking environments. And I'm looking right now. I live downtown. I live on the river right across from Wolf Point. If you're familiar with Wolf Point, right there. It's the confluence of the river, north, south branches, east branch. Yeah. So right on that point, they're building a new building. 1.2 million square feet, big building. It's going to be a Salesforce building. It's named for Salesforce. Salesforce is taking 500,000 square feet in there. All right. New contract this week. Wow. Kirkland and Ellis law firm is taking 600,000 square feet of a building that's being built. Do they think that we're going away from office buildings? Do they think we're going away from direct contact to people? So the only thing I'm going to say is the concept of influencers, and certainly it's out there on the internet in many, many ways, but I still think the influence of the personal, of face-to-face, will never lose its luster.
Well, we have a lot of conversations about, the millennials these days. Mm-hmm. I'm certainly not part of that generation. But, and like what Sandra was saying about just kind of being afraid to share information about ourselves online, or, where we don't control it so much, is really hard for me too. That's hard for us. But like my kids' generation, it's very different. They're very comfortable operating in that world. And I wonder, have you seen, that generation having a little bit of a different approach to networking? Because I think they use kind of different tools and approach those tools in a kind of different way, right?
Well, and that's true. But if we want to talk about mentorship, for example, my most recent mentor before COVID, through the Women's Mentoring Co-op at Chicago Innovation, was the first time I'd given a high school student, a girl that at Loyola Academy that I worked with for a while. And I will tell you, I think she valued the in-person as much.
Yeah.
And then, I directed her towards an organization that's being developed to help students like 8th grade through high school, kind of with mentorships and starting up entrepreneurships. And she went over there to become a mentor of students below her, which is brilliant. But they like that face-to-face thing as well. So as much as we say, the kids of this generation don't want to be on a phone, we do know that every time they're crossing a street, they're on a phone, right? So they are using tools in a different way, but I don't think we're going to replace the face-to-face. I don't believe our needs as humans are to be together, and it won't be over, some social media post.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do think that need for human connection is really important. I do think, though, one of the interesting aspects, and I think, a lot of these tools just bring a broader tool set and more opportunities to connect people. Because, my daughter, we'll drive around, our town here, and she's like, oh, that's so-and-so. Oh, that's so-and-so. She knows. We live in Evanston, and it's a population of, I think, 75,000 people or something. She literally knows everybody in town. And she's been in lockdown for 2 years, right?
Imagine what she can do.
And she's like, oh, that's so-and-so. I'm not, right. She already, it's kind of like she's got all these preloaded connections, too, now. And so, she, when she sees them in person, then she's right at it. She knows them all, right?
Right.
So,
the harder, I think, with the social media, though, is how negative it can be on an individual. And that's the thing that I worry about for this generation. Their self-confidence, their ability to see past this as, just mean people, and give them a belief that if you take away the E side of it, the internet side of it, that if you were face to face with these people, they wouldn't be quite so nasty. Well, that's a hard lesson learned, I think.
You know what's funny? I totally agree with that. I think there's just a lot of like really difficult and frustrating things that are happening, and because the reach is broader, it makes it more difficult. But on the other hand, I think in person there's a lot of that for kids as well. But I think interestingly, I think it's the older generations that really struggle with the meanness even more online. I think, like people my age are absolutely toxic in social media. Whereas I think with the kids, I think they have like different expectations of it. And I think they share more broadly and more openly on it. And I see, while I do see the toxic nature of some of that as well, I don't see honestly as much of that toxicity with them as I do with my generation.
Okay. We can only hope, right? Because I hate to have the kids, the rest of us are going to have to figure out our adult life, but I hate to have these kids growing up having significant insecurities due to that nature. That's all. We all had, nobody likes growing up being a teenager. Nobody go back to it again ever, I don't think, because of how hard it is. And when we come out of that, not unlike you, Chris, and me, myself, very, very inward, very self-conscious.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it any worse for any other kids. That's all.
No, and I think we've all got a lot of really significant mental health challenges coming out of this pandemic in particular, right? I mean, I think this is going to be the next 5 years are going to be really interesting as the impact of all this really shakes out on us. Because I know it's been, I didn't think all this was as hard on me as it actually turned out it was, and I'm only starting to understand now, like how kind of difficult it's been in a lot of regards. So.
Well, and I would suspect that coming out of it, we will all feel that same way. The uniquenesses of the families that are all family together versus the people that are alone. And I'm alone, and people that are in with big families would die to be alone, right? To get a space that they could be just themselves, and yet those of us that are independent and our own say, this isn't all panacea. All right. So each of us will respect the challenges that have gone on. And I think as we get back together again, we'll be a lot more sensitive towards the experiences that people had and the, PTSD that comes out of COVID. I suspect that we will all kind of walk down this path together and try to help each other out.
I hope so. Because, I think the way I look at things now, and this has been kind of a pandemic shift for me, like I see people who are really nasty and mean. And now I think it's like, there's probably some underlying anxiety that's happening there. And that's just like, people kind of get to it's like this ratcheting up of anxiety. And then they just kind of tip over the edge and they just get so anxious that they're just ready to lash out at anybody, and I think our society these days is kind of, you can see that everywhere, right?
We can go back. That's a whole different conversation to go through all of the challenges that we've been through besides the pandemic that have gotten us to this point. And, I'm always a believer that the pendulum swings too far, and I can't wait to get it back to center. That's all. I think we all need that breather. We all need to walk away from the vitriol and try to get to, new ideas again, get to growth, get to sunshine, get to, a future, get a vision again where, we feel like we can, in fact, exchange ideas and learn and grow because of interpersonal interactions. To me, that will be ideal.
Yeah. What Ellen said, she did it well.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really great message. And I really hope that plays out like that.
So my brand should be the pendulum.
The pendulum.
The pendulum. Back to center. Okay?
Back to center. Bring it back to center. I'd vote for that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I think that's where the network has helped out so many people during this pandemic, right? Misery loves company, right? You talk to somebody else and they're going through the same scenarios. Sometimes you don't want to tell people, you don't want to overshare. But the fact is, so many people have had a real tough year for many different reasons, like, Ellen was saying. So when you talk to somebody else and it's not even about work, but just like, hey, man, how are you doing?
Are you surviving?
Are you all right? The last time I talked to you. Yeah. Yeah, it's...
Well, and when somebody comes at you hard, maybe the answer is like, hey, man, you okay?
Yeah, what's going on in your life?
What's happening?
That you're this angry.
Yeah.
Someone used the term hate with me on something, a different topic. And I wanted to say, hate's really a strong word. Maybe we don't want to go to hate. Maybe we disagree. But, this concept of everything is in the superlatives. And we all feel that, it's like everybody's, nerve endings are at peak. So they feel every little thing in big numbers and big concentrations. And I'm hoping that we can get past that. And with the CIO of the Year Awards, we have weekly Meet the Candidates series. And then after that, we have a half hour of casual interaction with the people that are visiting or coming in as audience. And the need for people to be there and people connected, at least over Zoom in a free conversation, you can see the real joy of people being together. So if you can't be face to face, at least you can pour a glass of wine and talk to each other over some stuff funny and cute, and a lot of it is just business. What are you doing? How are you doing it? What are the challenges that you're having, or specific ideas? So the need to network continues. The need for us to grow as professionals and to be able to give back in this arena, I think is very clear right now still.
Yeah, I had at one point in my life, I was managing teams around the world and all over the U.S. and in EMEA and Asia Pacific regions and stuff like that. And what I would see is that the team, after about 6 months of not having been face to face with each other, would just be everybody's backstabbing and just sniping at each other and things like that. And then we just have this get together, and literally all it took was one beer. Everybody goes out for a beer, and it was all reset. And it's amazing how that dynamic always plays out. And I think we're really probably in the heat of that right now, right?
Yeah. One of the techniques I used when I was over at Water Rec was I would have a monthly luncheon for whoever's birthday was that month, and have bring in some food and meet them, talk with them. And the point was, we're not talking business. Let's have lunch. We're not talking business. We're just talking us. Yeah. And the ability to break walls down by being together, whether it's a beer, whether it's a lunch. The technologists have always found you have to feed them. If you feed them first and they're happy with food, the rest of it is a piece of cake. All right. So just, food always is the equalizer. And, and it's a very simple way, a beer or some food. It's a very simple way to kind of tell people we appreciate them and to break those walls down when life is being tough.
Yeah. So note to CFOs in the world, approve all those expenses because they are super important to the business.
In government, you do it yourself, and I had no problem paying for it myself. No, the taxpayers wouldn't pay that. I wouldn't want that back. But I mean, it is an expense that people should consider to be an investment in team building. So, Ellen,
just tremendous knowledge. It's a great conversation. I think this is a lot of really important stuff we talked about today. But what's next for you? Like, what do you got going on? I'm sure you've got so many organizations. What's happening?
Yeah, I'm focusing a little more on the personal right now for some very personal reasons. We're all aging a bit here. Family's aging. I want to focus on family a little bit more because of a couple of personal things that have happened in my life. Meanwhile, as I get involved, I'm involved with the Chicago Innovation Awards. I'm involved with the SIM chapter, obviously, CIO of the Year Awards. What I'm finding is, as much as, I'd like to spend more time on some personal things, as soon as we get into conversations about ideas and new innovations and things, that really excites me. So it'll be curious to see how much I step away from some of that, because it really, really, really does excite me.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I've always admired you personally a ton, and I appreciate all the advice and connections you've, helped me with. And, I just want to say thank you for that over the years, and thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate the times that we've spent together, throwing ideas across the table. As you say, you don't necessarily talk about business, but we get into great new thoughts, ideas. So my encouragement to the audience is, get out there, share yourself a little bit, learn about other people, find ways to make it more than the job that you have right now, invest in your profession, learn from other people, come back with a sense of satisfaction that I think is the real, icing on the cake of being a professional. So
awesome. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
This has been great. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you like what you saw, please consider subscribing and give us a like. And I will see you in the next video.